It's all about making connections today on Beads, Baubles, and Jewels.
Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Create your style with Swarovski elements. eksuccessbrands.com/create your style with Swarovski elements. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com. Jewel School, a division of Jewelry Television. jtv.com/jewel school. TiaraCast, define your design with metal. TiaraCast.com.
Hi, I'm Katie Hacker, your host, and today you'll wrap, coil, and weave and hammer your way toward interesting jewelry. There are so many creative ways to join your jewelry, and in many cases, these connections become an integral part of the design. Let's begin with chandelier findings created with wire wrap techniques. So take a look at these yellow earrings, and you'll see the beaded portion in the middle is the chandelier finding that I'm talking about. Now on the aqua necklace, I just turned it upside down. And you do a little bit more wire wrapping here, but it's the same basic technique. And all of these samples show different ways of using this chandelier finding. It's very simple, and you just start with an eye pin. So an eye pin has a loop on the end, and I've already strung 3 4mm bicone crystals onto the eye pin. So that is the way you get started. Now, if you were going to make the long portion for the pendant, you would use a longer wire, but this is really quick and easy. All you do is take your round nose pliers, leave a little bit of space, and wrap around like this so that you have a very basic loop in the middle. Now, eye pins are made from wire that has been hardened a little bit, so it's going to hold its shape really nicely. And the bicones fit together to also help provide that structure for the piece. So you thread a few more on, and I can feel them lock into place here at this place where they meet. I'll just bend this, give it a little bit of a trim, and then use my round nose pliers to make a basic loop. Now what you want to do is turn your loops so that they are all facing the same plane, so they're all toward the front of your earring. Then you'll thread your chains on, and I go with the short chain first, right onto the loop, and then I'll cut a second piece of chain that's slightly longer. So just a little bit longer, maybe 1/2 inch. And then you'll put that on the same loop, and then you'll attach it to the other side the same way, just opening that loop. Now, when these are both attached, then you're going to slide it onto an ear wire. And ear wires, of course, you can embellish with another bead in a complementary color. This is just a paler version of the yellow. And I've slid this on, and then you'll attach it here at the top. And this type of ear wire is kind of special because you can slide it right on and then pinch this shut. And you use your chain nose pliers to fasten it up. And it gives you a really great dangly connection there. Now, if you take a look at the yellow earrings again, you can see the side here where they're attached, and that gives you your little connector there in the middle. This purple pendant is the exact same idea, but I added a beaded link here at the top to connect it to the middle of the necklace. And the green earrings, same idea again, but you cover it with a wire coil, and you have your chains hanging down. And then with the red necklace, you can see that I did some extra wire wraps around the center, and I used a slightly thicker wire for that one too. And on the rest of our show today, we'll have Brenda Schweder wrapping her way to bracelets titled Dealy Bops. Then, Joe Silvera shows how to make your own prong settings for unusual shapes. And finally, expert seed beater Leslie Rogalski weaves parallel crystals and pearls. Brenda is up first in the segment we filmed earlier. I'm here with author and designer Brenda Schweder. And Brenda, you specialize in working with steel wire.
I do.
Love this bracelet that we're going to be making today, the Scribble. Great name.
It's great, and it's easy to do as a scribble.
Oh, good. So tell us how we get started with steel wire.
Well, steel wire, the whole process is that steel is my favorite thing to work with because it's a lot easier to do, has a lot more forgivability, which is good for me. But there are a few things that you need to worry about, and that one of them is to basically you need to clean the wire very well.
So you use steel wool for that, or the brass brush?
Steel wool or the brass brushes for that. And then you need to set the wire with a wax, and I use microcrystalline wax. And so, as we all know, that steel, especially if you live in a humid climate, it tends to rust, and we don't want our jewelry rusting on us.
Right, so before this project, you would brush it down and add the wax.
Mm-hmm. And actually I actually use the steel wire for this particular project because this gauge wire is so fine, I can just wrap this wire right inside, and then
perfect.
I get a nice, I get all the surface covered.
Great tip. Mm-hmm. So it looks like these mandrels you made yourself.
I sort of did. I got them at the hardware store, and basically they just already come in foot lengths, Katie, from your Ace or wherever, the local hardware store. And it's just, I tend to use things that I can find easily. So I want to find something that I can wrap around. Sometimes I'm even in my pantry looking for a good can.
Right. You're just looking for a mandrel.
I'm just looking for a mandrel.
Well, what wire is this that you're wrapping?
This is steel, and this is 24 gauge, and that comes in easy dispenser packs. And I just wanted something that was going to be a little more delicate than what I usually work with, which is 16 gauge.
Okay, so how do you get started?
What we do is we take one of our easy to find mandrels and take a length, which this is all on the website, and start wrapping it around. I wrap 20 times.
Is that so that you get evenly, all the scribbles are the same size?
Right, we do want some consistency. Anytime I'm doing a link bracelet, I want some consistency in the links so that you can kind of have that nice repetitive pattern to it. And then what I do is take, and when that comes off the mandrel, I take and put a piece, just a 3-inch piece of 28 gauge, and this is actually a little bit thicker than what I usually use here. But tightly wrap that, just like you would a bread twist tie. And so you've got one point where it's sort of stanching together. And then at that point, I'll start spreading these out. And you can see that I'm starting to do that here. And we just gently spread these all out until they get to be a ring.
All right.
And it really stays, you had asked before if it stays in place. It really does. The technical industry term for this wire is bend and stay wire.
Oh, so it has a little bit more memory than lots of our viewers will be familiar with working with sterling or copper wire that's been enamel coated. So this wire is going to just automatically have more of a memory.
It pretty much does. It comes to us dead soft already, and it's annealed, and it has a carbon coating from being annealed.
So as you're working with it, you're actually work hardening it.
Exactly, and even by putting it around the mandrel, it's work hardening.
Right. So are you also so I know you're going to make some more of these to create the bracelet. How do you get started with your jump rings?
The jump rings are just taking a mandrel, another type of mandrel. This one I wanted smaller jump rings, so I chose this mandrel and just basically tightly wind a different kind of wire. You see that we're using copper here, but you could use brass, which is what I did in the sample. So once I get that wire, that coil cut, I take it off, and then I just snip a couple jump rings right off here, one at a time. I'm using the flat edge of this against one edge, and I'm holding both sides of my wire so I don't snip a piece into your face.
And then you turn I just want to point out that you turned your cutter around so that the flush side is at the other end of the ring, so that when they come together, they both have the flat side.
I always have to think about this. I did. I turned it around.
You did.
and then I just do the very next one, and that's how you get nice and ring. Now normally what I'll do is I'll take and I'll put these on my bench block
And then saw.
to saw them, but even to work harden them and to get a little bit more texture.
To hammer them.
Yeah,
I see.
but I like this roundness to this because it sort of went with the roundness of the whole design. So I
Right.
just left it, and it's work hardened enough because I've already put it around the mandrel and
Okay.
made the coil.
So when you're ready to connect two of these guys together then, does it matter where you are working on the scribble?
It does. Where I have done the connecting is where I just take 2 or 3, and that sort of keeps that whole thing together then. So if I can show you on this one, this obviously would be hidden here on this one. But when I take it around, I know it'll stay, somewhat closed. And I just try to get a few of them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Can you show us just attaching those two together?
I
these
sure
guys?
can. So and obviously this one's a little bit different gauge. We'll
Right.
take 2 of the same.
Okay.
I've already opened this jump ring, and I'm just going to use two pliers. Some people like to use 2 chain nose. I'm just using whatever is
Whatever's
available.
handy, right.
Because that's
Because
who
you're just
I
that
am.
kind of gal.
And I'm going to put both of them on. And then I'm going to close that up.
And it's the same technique when you're ready to attach the clasp. You would just use the jump ring.
Exactly. And I
Okay.
didn't make a special clasp for the other side just because I kind of wanted that fluidity of only having
Right.
one.
You could just link directly to your design. Good. Well, thank you so much. This is a great project. Some
Thanks,
really
Katie.
good tips.
Thank you.
And we will be right back. I'm here with metalsmith Joe Silvera and author. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Nice
Yes.
to be here.
Today we're talking about connections, and you're going to show us how to solder.
That's right. As part of making these free-form custom connections here that you can use to set just about anything.
I think that it's so cool that you can make a pendant out of all these different things, and you would never find a bezel for these.
It
So
just opens up the bead shop
it
to
really
new
does.
possibilities.
So you create it from scratch. How do you start?
Well, you start with the piece that you're going to set, and you just make a simple tracing of that piece, and then you can design kind of the armature that's going to go underneath it as a base, and you'll connect prongs to that. That will flip the prongs up and over onto the piece to connect it and hold it down. And of course you have to think about where you're going to put a jump ring or something so you can wear it.
Right. So you plan out your connections in advance.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. So from there, you just bend some wire to make the base that's going to go underneath your piece.
Okay, and that's 16 gauge?
16 gauge, and it's an 18 gauge jump ring.
Okay.
And
Can you
then-
do this with any wire, or do you always use sterling?
Well, I like sterling, but you could do this with fine silver, argentium. You could do it with copper. So it's all open, any of the metals you can normally solder. So I'm going to put some flux on it now.
Okay.
And this is going to protect the metal while I solder, so it'll keep it from getting too scaled up. And we'll make the first couple of connections. One to solder this frame shut, and the second to attach the jump ring. And I'm going to use easy sterling solder. You could just as easily use medium or hard, whatever your preference is. And I'll go ahead and flux the jump ring as well.
All right. We haven't seen much soldering for a while.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, so it's fun to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be here. So I'll also have to cut some solder. So this is easy solder, and the pieces are quite small. I think people are usually pretty surprised at how small the
Just
the
takes a
chips are.
touch.
Just a tiny bit. The whole idea with soldering for jewelry is you want the solder to be pretty invisible when you're done.
Take some practice.
Absolutely. So little tiny little piece.
Yeah, and tell us about your work surface too while you're...
Well, I'm working on a ceramic solder board, and so that's the surface I'm going to solder on directly. And underneath it, I have just a tile from a hardware store.
And that's to protect your table.
That's right, because the heat can go right through the board, so nobody wants a scorched kitchen table.
And you're not making creme brulee.
I'm not, I'm gonna solder. But, you know, it's as accessible as that, just to use a
Sure.
creme brulee torch. Okay, and I'm gonna put a little bit of flux on the solder as well. That helps make it sticky and to keep it clean while you're trying to move it around. So we'll start with that joint there. soon as it balls up and glistens, you can scoop it up on the end of the pick. And warm up the flux on here. And I usually stand by with the flux brush just in case I get little gaps like that. You can always apply a little bit of flux while it's hot. And that's why you don't use expensive brushes. You want to see a nice flat white coat like that. Bring the heat to the join. So warm up the rest of the piece first. And drop your solder off on the join. And then heat it up to make it go.
Is there any beginner tips that you give for people when they're learning how to solder?
Patience, you know.
That's an important one.
Absolutely. And just, remember to follow the guidelines, the simple steps. You have to remember to keep things clean and there we go, just like that. And make sure the joint is flush. Now we're going to bring this over for the jump ring to attach. And I'm going to use another surface so you can see that you can do this on a different surface as well. So this is stuck on here. So I'm just going to loosen it with some heat. And we're going to use a honeycomb block.
And why do you switch? Because you could use either one?
You can judge by how long something's taking on the surface. So if it's going a little bit slower on the ceramic solder boards because it's a little bit colder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I can bring it in like that.
I want to get that ring right in place.
Absolutely. Just want to get it up against the flat spot that I'm working with, like so. Okay, and grab our other piece of solder.
Okay.
All right, now that the solder's in place, I can go back to warming this piece. And you notice I didn't have to pickle it in between. As long as the piece is clean, I can come in and just balance the heat between the two. And we'll get that to flow. And a butane torch is a little bit colder, but you can see that it's about to flow there.
Yeah, and you constantly are moving your torch so it doesn't get hot in one spot.
Well, I like to keep it moving a little bit so that, so I don't burn a spot, but it's also trying to maintain the heat on a little bit larger space. Like this.
Okay, so on the piece where you form, once this is attached.
Yep, like it just attached right now.
All right, once that's attached, then you're gonna throw this in the pickle.
That's right.
Okay, and make your prongs.
Mm-hmm.
And we should explain what pickle is.
Well, pickle is a cleaning solution. So it used to be really heavily acidic, but you can use biodegradable citric-based pickle now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so it's pretty home friendly. So this would be the next stage here where you'd have the prongs already starting to be attached. And you can do different things with your prongs where you can have straight wire or forged wire or even ball up the end and flatten it.
I like that look. And that's what you did with your finished piece.
That's right. That's what I'm doing with this one. So then to get the measurement, you just simply put this on the back of your piece and you take a piece of scrap wire and you run that over the edge to figure out the size.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you bend these prongs to the front of the piece? Once your piece is all soldered together on that, do you just use pliers or do you anneal it?
You can use your fingers and then you can use pliers. So I'll just move this aside here like that.
Sure.
So do you want to see it bent up now?
Yes.
Okay. And then you put your piece on the frame and you can bend these up around it with round nose pliers.
Okay, well, we're almost out of time, so let's take a look at your finished piece.
Okay.
These are just so beautiful. And
Thank you.
Do we need to polish it?
Well, preferably before you put the prongs up, you want to polish it with some sandpaper, and you could even tumble it for a while in the tumbler.
Okay, well, this is such a great way to make easy connections. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, and we will be right back with Leslie Rogalski. I'm here with Leslie Rogalski, and Leslie, you have a beautiful bracelet to show us.
I'm going to show you how to use a 2-needle crisscross through chain.
All right.
So we're going to connect links of chain with other beads and layer them together.
Oh, perfect.
It's really fun. Now I'm using a lightweight polyester chain, but you can do this on any chain.
Okay.
Now, here's how we start. You link through every other link in the chain, and when you work with chain, you want to make sure that your chain stays with the links parallel. That's important in working with chain.
Yeah, that can be tricky.
So I'm using 6mm crystals and size 10 cylinder beads, and I've just crisscrossed through the links already, so you can see when I pull it together, it snugs the links up.
Yes.
And I'm gonna pull this so the stitches come together. Okay. And of course, you would be crisscrossing yourself through here. And you want to make sure that the links that are not being stitched through go underneath onto the bottom. Okay. So you're going to see that.
So you'll adjust everything as you go.
So you adjust as you go. I have my piece taped to my work surface because you want a little bit of tension as you pull against the chain. You can see that they're starting to snug up together. Now, one of the parts of this is to crisscross through a spacer bead. So in between each of the crystals, I have a white, a black, a white, a crystal, and a spacer bead on one needle, and I've passed through my next link, and on the other needle I have a white, a black, a white, and the crystal. Now I have Super Duty magnifiers for this because I'm working with black thread and matte black beads and black chain. So I'm going to put these on so that I can really make sure that I'm not piercing my thread and I'm really getting through. Okay. So I can see that the needle comes through that. And then I'm actually going to take the bead, the spacer bead, so I can really see that.
Oh, and slide it right onto your
Slide it right onto my needle.
You know, this is...
So that I don't miss the bead.
Yeah, this is a great way of connecting beads to chain. And, I mean, I could see using this in a lot of different ways.
Yep. Here we go.
And we'll have the complete pattern online, of course.
Of course.
But this will give people an idea of how to get started.
And make sure that that needle passes through that link, too. It's very easy to overlook that. And you want to make sure that you don't pull that through. So again, I'm using the lightweight chain because I'm really layering it. And now I'm going to be able to pull this snug against that. Oops. Thank you for holding that for me.
Sure, no problem.
You would be taping it to your work surface. I'm going to pull that in snug. And I went through that spacer.
Okay.
Just nice and neat.
Yeah, so are you basically doing would you consider this a ladder stitch or a double needle weave?
It's a double needle crisscross weave. Now what you're going to do is you're going to work with these all the way back down until the length that you need. You're going to have to measure it. And now, if you notice, there's a space between the sets of black and white on either side of the crystals, and we're going to add small 3mm crystals to this.
Okay, just to cover up those exposed threads.
Yes, so what you would do is you would come back through, let's just say this is a little shorty version, all right? Say this is the length of your cuff. You would want to come back at the end through the crystal and the first set of the 3 beads, and then it does help at this point to really put this on with your fingers. And you're going to put that smaller crystal on, and then you're going to pull that all the way down.
Right.
And you're just going to make a straight line all the way through now, passing through the 3, black, white, all the way through, and pulling it snug so you can see it's starting to make that stripe.
Oh yeah, and we can see it even better on this one. Let me flip this one over
here. There you go. This
here.
one's already finished on the one side, and you can see you take each needle parallel down each side, just like that. When you get to the far end, flip it over.
So clever.
Now we're working back now. I've already started doing the exact same thing with a crisscross 2 needles, only this time I'm using size 11 matte cylinder beads with the spacer in between 4mm crystal pearls, all the way down, and look how they sit in the links. Do you see how the chain sits right on top of the crystals? So you can see the difference in the different sides.
So show us how you stitch through one of those links. You want to, like you said, make sure that the link is raised.
You want to make sure that the link is raised, and you're going to do the same thing where you have your spacer bead. So you have that bead that the needle gets crisscrossed through, and you can use your extra super magnifiers if you want for this, but you're going to come through the link and the one bead. That's right.
And you're using a thermally bonded beading thread for this project?
Yes, and you notice that you can't even see the thread. I want the thread to be as invisible as possible. So I'm using black because I'm using black chain. If you're using a metal chain or a chain of a different color, you can choose a different kind of beading thread. Now I would pick up 2 seed beads, a pearl, and I would crisscross again through, and you would finish all the way down. And when you get to the very end, where
Yes.
you know that you're at the length that you need and everything, just knot it off and weave your thread ends through.
Okay, now
back
how do you
into it.
attach a clasp to this?
Okay, that's really fun and very easy. I'm going to switch this here.
So you've done your intricate stitching, now you're ready for a little wire wrapping.
It's just a really little wire wrapping. You only need like a 2.5 inch piece of wire, and you're going to make a simple loop, and it just goes right through.
Oh, right through the chain.
Right through the chain, and you're going to complete your loop. You're going to string on. I have a rondelle, a crystal rondelle with a crystal and another crystal rondelle, and they nestle nice together, so they're connecting there. And a little pearl, and then I have one part of my toggle. And I'm just going to make a simple wire wrap loop to attach that toggle and snip the end off. You can see one where I finished it here at this end.
Let's look at the finished one, because you can really see the loop here at the end of the bracelet where it's attached to the toggle.
That's right, it's the same thing. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Leslie.
Fun to do.
Thanks for joining us again today, and remember to stop and visit our website and Facebook and YouTube for more projects. Hope to see you next time as we create texture in our designs.
Instructions for today's projects, plus other ideas, techniques, and information are available on the web at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. Today's show is number 1711. If you enjoyed today's show and want to see more projects and great guests, you can order a DVD set of the entire Beads, Baubles and Jewels Series 1700. All 13 episodes plus bonus content featuring soldering techniques with Kate Richborg and spiral herringbone with Jean Campbell, only available in this DVD set. Order at beadsbaublesandjewels.com for $29.99 plus shipping and handling. Don't miss a single episode and get these bonus projects. Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Create your style with Swarovski elements. eksuccessbrands.com/create your style with Swarovski elements. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com. Jewel School, a division of Jewelry Television. jtv.com/jewel school. TiaraCast, define your design with metal. TiaraCast.com.